right, my survivor friends, I have good news and better news. Today's interview is the last of the filler episodes for the interregnum between Season 4 and Season 5. On Friday, September 6th at 11:59 p.m. or 23:59 for you Europeans, Season 5, Episode 1 will appear like a rising phoenix on your podcast players around the globe. And if you can't wait that long, I'm going to make it available to subscribers on Acast a week earlier. That's the perk. You subscribe, you get early access, I get money. Quid pro quo, Clarice. Quid pro quo. And you may have noticed the confidence with which I stated the exact date and time of the release. Well, that, my survivor friends, is because I have already written it, and Robert has already recorded it. So, it would take a fairly tall tsunami or a nuclear incident for me to miss this delivery. But alas, the woods are dark and deep, and we have miles to go and promises to keep. So, today, we present you a final interview. In this case, I am interviewed by Les on his Less Is Made podcast. And he was quite interested in my Boston Marathon stories, among other things. The interview is about 30 minutes long. If you have somehow, with cunning and fortitude, managed to listen through all the conversations of this summer of your discontent, you now know a little bit more about me, which is neither good nor bad, but maybe provides some color to your experience as we lumber luxuriously through the final season. I will return for comments at the end. Enjoy this last interview.
Hi, this is the Less Is Made podcast. I have a fellow New Englander with me today, and we are just going to chat about all the cool things that my guest does. My first thing is, how long have you been living in the Northeast?
My whole life, born and bred.
New England. Sorry, we should say that my guest's name is Chris Russell. He's seems to have so many cool things going on, and that's why I'm glad that he wanted to join me.
Cool.
So, my thing is, how did you get into running? Because running is just not something it seems like most people get into.
Yeah, so I started in high school, actually, and it wasn't for running per se, but I was on the wrestling team in high school.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things that went on there is that the captain of the wrestling team, like the captains of the wrestling team, they were also on the cross-country team. So I went and joined the cross-country team to sort of be with those guys. And it got me in shape for wrestling. So it wasn't my primary sport, but my primary sport was it's a little strange to carry on with you later in life. You just can't go up to a group of friends and say, hey, let's wrestle. You know.
Why not?
Running's much more socially acceptable. But I did a little bit, but then I came back to it like when I got to be about 30, because I was getting that, looking in the mirror, seeing that little bit of belt line expansion and going, I got to do something. And I knew how to run, so I got back into it. And then, then we started going. It's sort of a classic addiction tale where once you start doing it, then you get involved in races, then you get involved in longer races, then you get involved in the community. And it just sort of spirals out of control, I guess.
Man, all right, I'm going to be dead honest with you. The quickest mile I have ever done, probably in my life, had probably been 10 minutes. All right, I'm not against running. I do cardio, but I'm not doing cardio to be a distance runner. I'm not built like that, I mean, I could eventually, but, I have a lot of extra poundage on me, but I can move quick when I want to for certain spurts. But, you'd probably sit there and do a mile in like 4 minutes like it's nothing, because it's just sickening.
Yeah, not so much anymore. I'm an old guy now. But, well, it's another good thing about the sport is that as you get older, you can just go longer, right? As you get slower, you just go longer, and you can get sort of the same challenge out of it. And that's part of it, right? Part of it's the physicality, which it for some of us, you get almost a meditative effect from it. You always hear about the runner's high, right?
Yeah.
You get to a certain point, and it's kicking these cool chemicals into your brain, and it's very calming, and it's very thoughtful and very peaceful. It's integrative of both your mind and your body at that point. And then for the longer stuff, it's goal setting. We all need something to shoot for, and that it allows you to set further and further goals further out to the edge. And what you discover is what you think you're capable of and what you're actually capable of are vastly different, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, I understand runner high, but from a different viewpoint. I like calling it my fighter's high because I do a lot of fighting with I know it sounds cliche, but it's sword fighting, but we use foam weapons. And when I get that high, is we're doing like bigger battles when it's not just me training my group or fighting other groups, or we're having like an even bigger where it's like a couple hundred on each side. And to me, the whole like runner's high or fighter's high, it's just when all of a sudden like your body, your mind, and your breathing are all one, and it just works on that level, And
it integrates, and you get into flow state.
Yes.
And it's almost like you're outside your body, watching yourself do the activity, and it's really cool, right?
Yes. See, you can understand that from a different way, but yes.
Sure, it applies to anything. It applies to writing as well. There are times you drop into flow state in writing, and you're like, who's writing this stuff? It's not me. Where's it coming from?
And that's another great way of putting it, because I know knowing about you, so I'm a little rambling, but you have also been an author of a couple books. I've only got one book out. I'm working on my second, and I'm actually going to I'm also in the process of a novel, but it's going to take me some time. And there's times when the words are just flowing like a river, and there's other times for me when I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm fighting myself just to make this happen. And so, how do you go from being a runner into being an author?
It was easy transition. It's not something I did proactively or consciously. I've always been a writer, so to speak. It's been one of my aptitudes, one of my skill sets.
Really?
But I was out, when I got heavily into running, I was doing some fairly stupid things. And I was out, it hit me one day, right? I was out, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was in Quebec City. It was the winter time, and I was out in a parking lot doing repeats for my training. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I should write a story about this. Because you've been in Quebec City in the winter, right? It's like 20 degrees below zero.
Yeah.
Howling off the St. Lawrence. Yeah. I'm like, what am I doing out here at 5 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
And so I wrote that story, and a friend of mine happened to own a running website where they took articles, and so I started publishing articles that way. And then I got hired by those guys to write race reviews. So what they would do is they would sell advertising packages to races, and included in that was a review that they would post as a blog post. This is in the days of the blogs where that sort of had a lot of draw.
Yeah. I mean, it still kind of does, but only certain places or whatever. I know the landscape's different. But, when you talk about races, are you talking about, like, foot races? Or are you talking about bicycle races? Marathons. Woo.
Yeah.
And
marathons.
All right. Now, I know you have mentioned some. How many Boston marathons have you run in yourself?
So it's a tough calculation because with COVID, they went virtual for a couple of years. So I'm at 21 or 22, if you include the virtual ones.
Okay, my question, how do you do a virtual marathon?
So it's kind of fun, right? One of them I did in my neighborhood, and my neighborhood is a 5K loop.
Okay.
So I just parked my truck on the loop and opened up the back and laid out all my like drinks and food, and I just run a lap, take a drink, run another lap, and do that 42 times. You got a marathon.
Holy cow! You have to run that 42 times just for. If I do one loop, I'd be like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm good." Wow, that's. So so virtually it's like you're doing it, but you're doing it in like, I guess, a local space, not with around a bunch of people.
Right, you do it by yourself.
Ah.
And some of my buddies came over and joined me for some of it.
And there wasn't a winner or a loser, it's just, doing it for the...
Yeah, for the virtual, that's it, right? You just submit your time and they post it and there's results. That was a whole COVID thing. But out of that, there's a lot of virtual races now that people do. And like there's one I did called the Great Virtual Race Across Tennessee. It's a 1,000-mile virtual run across Tennessee.
Sheesh.
And so you sign up and you get all these other people and you have a website where it tracks your progress.
Uh-huh.
So think of it over the summer, right?
Yeah.
So you log your miles over the summer. You can run wherever you want. You log your miles. And it tracks you with everybody else in that race, right?
I mean, wouldn't that bring up, like, maybe you're not exactly running those miles? You can kind of fudge the numbers a little bit.
You could cheat if you want to, but who are you cheating? And there's no prize money in these.
Yeah, you're only cheating yourself.
So, and they're self-regulated, right?
Mm-hmm.
It turns out a lot of the long-distance runners, like the hardcore guys, are actually very technical guys too. It sort of lends itself to the scientist type,
mm-hmm.
and they like the numbers. So if somebody starts cheating on this stuff, they get found out pretty quickly.
Now, if I remember correctly, you're a fictional writer, correct? Most of your stuff?
What I've got is I wrote a couple of nonfiction books around running. But I transitioned with COVID, around the COVID time, around 2020, I had this flash that I wanted to write an apocalyptic fiction novel.
That's what I'm talking about, sorry.
Yeah, and I wanted to do that like my whole life. I've started this novel like 10 times in my lifetime. And with COVID, and this is a common story. I was just talking to a guy who has the same story. With COVID, he got trapped in his house and he wrote a book, right?
Right.
But I knew I didn't have the discipline to sit down and write a novel. But I had already been podcasting since 2007. I knew how to podcast. So I said, I'll write this as a podcast. And I'll write an episode, publish it as a podcast. That'll build an audience, and that'll force me to publish a chapter or an episode every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And now I just finished season 4. So that's 81 chapters in. And I'm editing the first manuscript right now to be published. So I'll have 4 books ready to go. 5 next year.
So instead of just writing a novel, you're like, you know what? I do podcasts. I like it. Let me turn this into a podcast where people can listen to it, every couple of weeks or whatever, and they get a little bit by little bit. That way you're not... that's actually a great idea.
It comes with knowing yourself, and I didn't have the discipline to sit down and brute force through a novel, but I do have the discipline to put out a show every couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, that's funny that you say that, because I have a lot of short stories that I thought about, doing like voice acting for. Do you like narrate or do the voice acting for the child, or you have someone else do it?
So I hire a guy, Robert, and if you've listened to it, you can go listen to the podcast. He does a really good job with a very unique voice. So it's narrated, the third party narration is from the point of view of an old man.
Okay.
He has this nice gravelly voice that I have him do, and it really, some people hate it, but it's different, and I wanted it to be different.
Okay, well, you know what? You're going to have a new fan. I'm definitely going to have to listen to this because with my regular job, I have nothing but time, and I always listen to a bunch of podcasts just because I need to fill the 40-plus hours of work that I have to do. And, you know, I try out a lot of stuff. I guess I'm not trying to say I'm picky with podcasts, but you have to have a good voice to where... And the sound quality has to be a little bit good. You know, I was listening to a podcast today, and I love what they were talking about, but one of the hosts just kept having, like, I guess she was speaking too close to her mic, and it just kept kind of popping or whatever, and it was really hard to get it, but I want to continue listening, hopefully their production value gets a little bit better, but I know, like, people think everyone can just start a podcast, but it's hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most of them don't make it beyond 10 episodes.
Here I am. I think I have 64 episodes. Not all of them are published, but I have 64 episodes in them being ready to go and it's working hard. And then you told me you've been doing this since 2007. So you've been in the game for a long time. At least 17 years now, it seems like.
Yeah, and I started a podcast called Run, Run, Live, which I still do, and that's about 500 episodes in.
Sheesh.
And at the time, like I said, I was running, right?
Yeah.
And doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, you know, I should do a podcast about this. Podcasts were in their infancy. People had just gotten iPods and the iPhones.
Yeah, the iPod, the iPhones, maybe the Zune player.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of podcasts, so, you know, there was a community of us sort of runners on the internet who all did this sort of stuff for each other. But it was great. I got to interview all these people, and yeah, it's still going. Made a ton of friends, people I hang out with today.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, last year, I don't know if I talked about, you don't know me much, but I'm a photographer by trade, and I have been since, like I said, 2007, got really big in 2008, 2009, I started taking off. I moved from the South to here, and things just kind of changed. I've always done a podcast in 2020, but it wasn't something that I was doing on a consistent basis, but I was just like, you know what? Photography is not really going to where I liked it to do. I'm going to dive into this, and, you know, I've been getting more and more comfortable with it. I'm trying to get better. I've been meeting great people like yourself that I just have great conversations with. It's just amazing when I go out there. I've talked to so many people from, you know, people that are involved with religion to conspiracy theories to people that talk about that they're able to communicate with aliens and book writers and everything else. And it's such an amazing... I have a gift for interviewing and talking, so I'm using that. Just like I said, talking with you is like something I've been looking forward to for days. Because I love meeting new people. And that's what I love this podcast to be about. I just talk to interesting people and I learn.
Well, that's what people like, Les, is they don't care so much about the content. They want to hear your passion. They want to hear your enthusiasm. And, you know, you can see that in real life, right? The people who are the most enthusiastic are the people you want to hang around with.
Yeah, you're definitely right. And it's funny is I was talking to I had the privilege of talking with David Chamoff, who basically was like he's considered the godfather of podcasting because he created the first podcast network back in 2006, 2005. And when we were talking, the episode's not out yet, but it will be. You know, stay tuned, listeners. But he said I was funny. And I don't even really think I'm funny. Like, I just, you know, I have a personality, sure, but I'm not funny compared to some of the guests I've had on this show. I'm just myself when I talk with people.
But that's a skill as well, right? Giving people the space to be their best interviewee.
Yeah, and I'm learning a lot. Even like when I'm interviewing you right now, I'm learning how to interact with people on my day-to-day basis to, you know, know when to like let them talk and kind of like pick up cues to like when to say something or whatever. So I learned a lot as well. And we're going back to, let's bring it back to your running. I want to talk about that day that changed the Boston Marathon, which you have run 22 times in that year. And you said you were there, and I just want to know what was going on in your mind and everything as it was going on.
So I may sound a little choked up at some points in this conversation, right? Because it still gets me, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because this is my tribe. This is my community.
Yeah, definitely.
And in 2013, I would have been on somewhere around my 15th or so Boston Marathon.
Jeez.
I remember I was having a bad day, and I had back cramps, so I had to walk a lot. And I ended up so far back that I got turned around right as you go into the finish line. So like mile 26-ish change is where I got stopped. And if I had run my normal pace, I probably would have been right on top of.
Oh my God.
So it was, and you could see something was going on in those final miles. You could look in the crowd and you could see people on their phones and you could see their expressions and you could tell there was something going on in that, that last half mile. And yeah, they turned us around. I go, what are we supposed to do? Right? I just ran a marathon. I'm soaking wet. I'm in my shorts and singlet. It's April in Boston. The sun's going down in a couple hours.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? And they're like, tough, go someplace else. You can't come this way. So we all had to wander around and figure out how to get out of there and locate our bags to get our stuff so we could get some clothes on. I ended up dashing into a little fast food restaurant one street over and asking them if they had any of those big 55-gallon trash bags. And they gave me a roll of those, and I gave those out to the runners who were all standing around because everybody was freezing, right? The sun's going down. You're soaking wet.
Yeah.
You're in shorts and a singlet. And then some lady in Boston from those brownstones, some lady opens the door and comes out with a bunch of winter coats and just starts giving these fur coats to runners in the street. And so you'd see these women, runners, right, have to run the marathon. They'd be wearing these fur coats. And eventually we found some buses, and they didn't know where to go. We went over to the public gardens, the park in Boston, behind the finish line. And then we finally got to our bags. I was able to eventually find my way back to the hotel where my club was, because we had rented it, and we got a suite on the top floor. Because at the time I was traveling a lot. I had a lot of hotel points, so they always put us in a suite. So we just stayed there all night, and dialed up some food and beer and stayed there all night. But it was I had friends that were there and that got pieces of shrapnel in them, and I knew the people who were doing triage at the finish line, because there's a big medical presence at the finish line.
Yeah.
Because people tend to drop at the finish line at Boston. It's a very difficult course, and you get weather events. So they had this, I was talking to one friend of mine where they had these students in, these were medical students that were preparing for first aid sort of curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And the bombs went up, and they said, okay, you guys are all, they basically deputized them and recruited them, and they started triaging, the wounded right there. And it's such a well-organized race, such a high-quality organization, and they're so prepared that there was, we lost a couple of souls there who were right on top of the bomb, but not a lot, because you get that in Boston, all that capability right there.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that, and it just, I hope going through your head is like you're saying, if you're a little quicker that day or whatever, now you're feeling like survivor's guilt or whatever, and it sounds like you're doing all right, and I'm happy for that, but it's just something sad that happens where we're not even doing anything wrong. You're just running a marathon just to do it. It's for fun. I don't really know much about the Boston Marathon other than it's just a big race. And it seems like people just have fun. I don't know if there's any money towards it. I think the winner just has bragging rights for the year. You know, I don't know how it works, but it's not like you're doing anything special. You're just running a race with, like you said, with your people, with your tribe, with your community. And when something bad like that happens, it doesn't just hurt the people that got hurt, but it hurts everybody in general, you know? And
yep. But it pulls people together as well. Tragedy pulls people together. So we saw a lot of the best in people as well as the worst in people. So
yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Now, on the more happier topics, you're going to switch gears. How do you write a book about writing? Or about running, sorry. How do you write a book about writing?
So, you don't know a lot about Boston, so I'll have to give you a little primer there. So this is the oldest marathon in the world. It's been running for, 125 years, something like that. It started in, 1896, I think?
Probably.
Somewhere around there. And so this is the race that everybody who's a serious runner wants to run.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is you can't run it unless you qualify.
You have to qualify for the marathon?
You have to qualify by meeting a certain time standard in another certified marathon. And these time standards are they're age graded, but they're quite stringent.
Yeah, I believe that.
They've gotten worse over time. So the one book I wrote, the one nonfiction book I wrote was How to Qualify for the Boston Marathon in 14 Weeks with a Full-Time Job and a Family. And it is basically the training routine that I used to put on enough speed to qualify for Boston for all those years.
Wow.
It used to be easier. When I was doing it, it was easier. It's harder now.
Yeah,
so many. Before, when I started, it was just a New England thing.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be people from Ontario, maybe, some people, a handful of people from Japan and Korea where there's, crazy runners as well. But it was basically a local race. And now it's a global race. It's part of the global majors. It's been taken over by the big corporations. And so this year, I believe they lowered the standard. So far, they've lowered the standard by 10 minutes. So you have to go 10 minutes faster than you used to. And even with that, I think like 11,000 people ran the standard. So they qualified, but they didn't get in because you would need to beat the standard by 3.5 minutes. So
wow.
It's all first come, first serve on the grading. So it's really hard to get in, especially now that it's a global race.
And if you look at it like this, it's not like, it's not like you're being a boxer, you're wrestling or whatever. This is stuff that you don't have to go up against other people. You just have to do yourself. But man, I didn't figure that marathons would be so rigid and rough to get into.
Yeah, they like to call it the Olympics for normal runners.
The Olympics for normal runners. It is. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a runner. I like to do some cardio, just to stay in shape. But I know there's a difference of I'm in shape because I can do cardio. I do 15, 20 minutes here, do it a couple times a week. But then there's people like you, when you're doing it, you're at a whole nother level, and that's just insane.
Not so much now. I'm older now, right? I let that go because essentially I'd have to spend 4 to 6 months of the year training to qualify, and then another 4 to 6 months training to race it in the winter in New England.
Oh God, yeah, no, I know the New England winter. I've been here a couple of years now, but it's not fun. They just need to give you January and February, but then come March time, Lady Winter needs to go to me.
But to go back to your question around the why. It also is useful that a time is a very firm goal, right? You either make that or you don't. So it gives you something you can stick in the ground and measure yourself against quantifiably and then figure out a plan to get there, and then execute on that plan. So in that sense, it's very doable for someone who's willing to make the commitment, and it's also sort of a metaphor for everything else you do in your life, right?
Yeah.
If you have a quantifiable goal, if you're willing to set a plan, and then you're willing to wake up every day and execute to that, chances are you'll get it.
Yeah, you're definitely true. And I'm assuming as you said, you're a family man now. So and I know, I think you have kids. Did any of your kids pick up their love of running from you, or?
Not really. My oldest doesn't at all. My youngest does a little bit. I think she got a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be cool at someday for us to run the Boston Marathon together.
Yeah,
that would really be cool, right? I see other people doing that with their kids, so that would be cool. But no, not so much. And I didn't, I'm not the type to push.
Yeah, I mean,
on them, right?
Yeah, I get that too. I unfortunately at the moment do not have any kids of my own. I am gonna have a family one day, but I help raise my nephews, and we talk all the time. But they're back down south. I love those little guys, but the thing is. There were things that we kind of did it when they were kids, but as they got older, one decided not to continue doing it. The other one's like, look, I love doing this. And I feel like how you're saying is you're not trying to push them, but you would love for them to, do it. But I mean, if not, there's other things you do with them, I'm sure.
Well, I think it comes down to, for parenting, it comes down to modeling the behavior that you think is important and trying not to model the behavior that's destructive, right?
Yeah.
We're all human, so I'm sure there was some of that as well. And you'd be surprised. They may not say they're watching, but they are watching. They pick stuff up.
Kids,
they do listen.
They're like sponges. You do anything wrong in front of them or whatever, or say the wrong word, especially when they're real young, you're just like, yo, how would you? Okay. Been there, done that a couple times. Can't show them anything bad because then they mimic your behavior, and you're like, yeah. I know I'm the uncle and I'm supposed to teach you all the bad things your parents don't want to teach you, but you're not supposed to do it. And then say that I'm the one that showed you how to do it, because then you get me in trouble.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm laughing at myself. I laugh at myself a lot.
It's okay. Better than the alternative, right?
Yeah, definitely. I just look. As I was saying, I think I'm funny. Not really. I'm just good. I put on a good show for it. Now, I won't take up a lot of your time. Where can people find you? Where can they can get your books? Where can they see your work of running? Maybe you check out your wrestling record from high school.
Yeah, no, I don't know. You'd have to go pretty far back for that. So my websites are, for the running stuff, first of all, it's called Run Run Live.
Okay.
And I own runrunlive.com. And you can find a couple of books that I've written from that. And the podcast is Run Run Live as well. And I've actually started spinning that up again because I'm doing a lot of these interviews, so I can retask those.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all about efficiency.
Definitely get that.
My current project is called After the Apocalypse, and that's a podcast, and I'm turning that into a novel as well. And the website for that is oldmanapocalypse, all one word.com.
Okay, now After the Apocalypse, that's currently has 4 seasons done. Is that on all major platforms? Because I definitely want to check that out.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah, I do it on Acast.
Okay.
I think Acast is a friendly platform.
Yeah.
But it gets pushed everywhere.
That's cool. That means it's going to be on like Spotify, Google.
Yep. The majority of my listeners are from Spotify.
All right, good. Because that's what I'm going to have to look for you. I'm going to look at your work because that's awesome. Because I need something new to listen to, and it sounds like it's going to be fun. And I will give you a good review. I'll leave you a 6-star review just to say that you were,
So I have this Facebook group, and one of the challenge questions, because if you have a group, you have questions, or else you get all the bots.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions is, how did you find us?
Mm-hmm.
And Spotify is like the number one answer, right? And or it was recommended to me by Spotify. So whatever their algorithm is, if you're listening to anything that's similar, they're going to push you my show as well.
I'll have to search you up because I use Spotify a lot. That's that's my hosting platform for my show. So it works out that way. Yeah. Now, any words of wisdom you can give the listeners that are listening?
I think I've been talking to a lot of people, Les, and I think today's wisdom might be different next week, but today's wisdom is we seem to, as a society, want to funnel everybody into specific things.
Mm-hmm.
We want to say, that person's a plumber, that person's a computer programmer. But as humans, we're way more than all that.
Yes, we
It's
are.
okay to do multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have a portfolio of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to try things and then give them up, right? So this sort of cultural manipulation to funnel everybody into these focused areas, I'm not sure where that comes from. It's probably part of the Industrial Revolution, but go out and try stuff, and don't be afraid, right? Because that's where all the good stuff is. On the edge, where you're learning something.
You're definitely right. Those are definitely great words. Thank you so much for your time. All right, I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Les.
Okay, survivors, I see you eyeing me suspiciously as you rub your hands for warmth over a burning barrel. Is he really going to start Season 5 now? Is he going to let us back in the bunker for the winter? Yes, we are. Grab your meager belongings, claim a bunk and a comfortable spot on the frayed throw rugs, because in 2 weeks we are back in the apocalypse. Unless you want it a week earlier, then you can subscribe on Acast. You can also toss me some bottle caps for bartering at Patreon or buy me a coffee. I like coffee. No, I really like coffee. All of the links will be in the show notes and on our website at oldmanapocalypse.com. We have over 500 members in our eponymous Facebook group if you want to join that. Just answer the challenge questions because it saves me time. Otherwise, I have to hunt you down, and it adds friction to the process. My book project is progressing. I would venture even to say it's going well. I wrote a whole new chapter for the first manuscript book this week. Why? Well, because the way I constructed this, an episode at a time, especially in the first season, didn't really know what I was doing. I forgot to tie off a lot of loose ends, so I have to make it hang together better. And I'm targeting to publish this first book this fall. If you want to read the final draft, to find typos, if you want to be a typo hunter, I know some of you did this for me before, shoot me a note and I'll hook you up. That'll be a big favor for me, and you get to read the new version of Manuscript 1. And so we come to the end of the summer. We harvest our fields and celebrate with feasting. But winter is coming. The days grow short. The bunker shelves soon will be empty again, and we will need to venture forth into the decaying remnants of the dying world for provisions. So make sure to check the labels on those old cans of beans and keep surviving.